Thank you, Deborah. That was amazing. All right, I am so excited now to introduce Lisa Almond Baldwin. For over 25 years, she has fed her wanderlust for everything the world has to offer by writing travel and feature articles for numerous print and online publications. A few years ago, Lisa's travels crossed paths with a very personal inner journey, which resulted in her new book called I Cried and People Loved Me Anyway. I've already bought it. I'm so excited to read it. It's the story of how, due to a series of events that happened within a very short period of time, her life completely fell apart and she was literally ready to check out. However, through faith, self-forgiveness, and a lot of unconditional love, she moved from the depths of despair to living a truly authentic life. Lisa's website, authenticityandpurpose.com, showcases her experience as a gifted and sought-after motivational speaker, writer, and workshop facilitator. Her mission, through the written and spoken word, is to inspire others to live a life full of passion, authenticity, and purpose. I'm so thrilled to introduce Lisa Almond Baldwin, to have her here today. Good morning, Lisa.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Unity Palo Alto. It is so nice to be with you this morning. And again, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. You know, it's really funny when Reverend John and I looked at our calendars and planned this date. It was months and months and months ago, and we would have had no idea that we wouldn't be doing this in person. But the good thing is we have all of this great technology so we can still be together in sacred spiritual community across the miles. So the title of my talk is, That's My Story, and I'm Willing to Give It Up. Now, we all have a story, that collection of experiences we've had in our lives. Some of them are positive, some leave a little bit to be desired. But what we often do is latch on to the challenging ones, making them the central narrative through which we filter current and future events. So I have two stories from my life to share with you today. We have a slide coming. Okay, so this is me at about 6 months old. And as you can see, I had big brown eyes and slicked down jet black hair, and I was smiling all of the time. And I'm sure that I thought that life was just simply wonderful. Now, my mother used to tell me stories about taking me out in the stroller and double strapping me in because she was afraid I was going to fall out because I was always jumping up and down and waving and trying to say hi to everybody. And when I look back on that photo, it seems like there was this vibrant light oozing from every pore of my body. And life was just simply great. I was fed and I was clothed and I was bathed and I was held, and people oohed and awed all over me. But as I started growing up, things started to change. The external messages I was getting from those around me weren't quite as rosy, and just being myself became a challenge. Suddenly, other people had a lot to say. Now, whether you're a boy or a girl or however you identify yourself, some of these might sound familiar to you. You're not smart enough, or you're too smart for your own good. Your faith is wrong, or you need to hold certain beliefs. You're not Black, Hispanic, gay, straight, whatever, enough. You're too tall or you're too short. You're too fat or you're too thin. You're too young or you're too old. You don't make enough money or you make too much money. You really should drive this car. You should wear these clothes. You don't belong in this neighborhood. Or you've forgotten where you came from if you live in a certain place or in a certain manner. And this list goes on and on and on. And these supposed guidelines for living can be heavy burdens to bear. So the second story I have to share with you is, in the warm months, spring and summer, I like to ride my bike to the gym. It's a great way to get exercise. It's only 2 miles from my house. I get to leave my car at home. And I always go the same way, just out of habit. But I have been thinking for a while about changing it up just to see some different scenery. So on Tuesday, July 18th, 2017, I left my house. I went up to the first corner, and that's where I always turn right. When I got to the corner, I decided, you know what? Let's make today the day. Let's go straight. So I crossed the street. I was riding downhill, not particularly fast, totally aware of my surroundings. And when I looked ahead, I saw what looked like rocks and gravel strewn across the sidewalk. And I realized now that in my attempts to avoid the rocks and gravel, I overcorrected by squeezing both brakes. The bike screeched to a halt, the back wheel reared up, and all I heard myself say was, and then just like in the movies, like when someone's trying to show a flashback or perhaps an out-of-body experience, everything went white. And when the whiteness disappeared and life came back into focus, I found myself on the ground on all fours with most of my weight on my left arm. And due to the intense pain, it took me about 10 seconds to realize I had probably broken this arm. To this day, I don't remember anything that happened in between the white. The only evidence I have that I had obviously gone over the handlebars and rolled was that my bike and my backpack were up on the sidewalk in front of me. I had road rash all over my body. And when I looked at my helmet later, there were scratches where my head had obviously hit the ground. Fortunately, I could reach my backpack with my right arm. I got my cell phone, pulled it out, and called a friend of mine who lived about 2 blocks away to come and get me. So as I'm laying on the ground all by myself in intense pain, after I hung up the phone from her, the very first thing that came to my mind was, Lisa, say your gratitude list. So I just started talking out loud, everything that I can think of. I'm on the sidewalk and not in the street. It's daytime and not nighttime. It's a sunny day and not raining. I'm only 2 miles from the hospital. I have health insurance. My friend who's coming to get me, she'll know exactly what to do. And the biggest thing on that gratitude list for me was, God is here. A man jogging by, my friend that I had called, and some people who were driving down the street and saw me on the ground, everybody stopped right around the same time and called 911. So once the police came and the paramedics came, I was put into the ambulance for the ride to the hospital. And when I was in the ambulance, that gratitude list again came to mind. So I asked the very cute, I might add, paramedics. I hadn't hit my head that hard that I missed that, if they would say my gratitude list with me. And one of them said, well, what's a gratitude list? And I said, it's all the things I have to be grateful for, even while this is happening to me right now. So once we got to the hospital, to the emergency room, I got the distressing news that I had actually broken my left elbow. And I will spare you the gory details on what fortunately was going on out here that I couldn't really see. But I had to have surgery, and right away. So as you might imagine, once I got home, all drugged up, my arm wrapped from my shoulder to my wrist, that gratitude list was nowhere to be found. And to top it all off, many of the abilities that I had, and I now realize I took for granted, were suddenly taken away, even if only temporarily. Cooking, driving, opening the toothpaste, brushing my hair, tying my shoes, changing my clothes, all of that was a challenge. Being grateful for what I could do had gotten lost in the shuffle. In the early days of my recovery, I realized what I was really suffering from was an overwhelming feeling of worthlessness. And what I was telling myself about those breaks in my arm was, see, you can't do anything right. Why did you have to go a different way to the gym? The other way was working just fine. You always make bad decisions. These problems you're having, they're all your fault. You're no good to anybody like this. Once again, I was tying my self-worth to my old childhood stories, to what other people had to say about me. But like I said, we all have a story, that collection of experiences in our lives. But when we latch onto the challenging ones, we allow our inner critic to sit on our shoulder and whisper them to us over and over and over. In the book Radical Forgiveness, Colin Tipping talks about something he calls a forgiveness centrifuge. And the forgiveness centrifuge, he says, we can use to separate the facts of what happened in our lives from our interpretation of the facts. He says it's kind of like a juicer where you put something in, spin it around, and separate those two parts. So we can use that to look at our old stories and see how those things have played out in our lives. So for example, your fact may have been that as a child, your father left the family. Your interpretation of that fact might have been that it was because of you, that you did something bad or wrong, or you shouldn't have done something, or you should have done something, and you took his leaving to mean that it was about you. Your fact may have been that you had a career goal that maybe other people said was beneath you, or that boys or girls can't or shouldn't do or be that. Your interpretation of that fact might have been, well, my ideas are stupid. Or I really need to ask other people before I make decisions because mine can't be trusted. Or you may have even thought, well, who am I to have a dream in the first place? And those false stories that we tell ourselves work in the same way by what on all accounts might be called a positive situation. So for example, I have a friend who said she had a wonderful childhood. She loved every minute of it. She said she was told how smart she was and how resourceful she was. She played well with others. She ate her vegetables, just an all-around lovey kid to be around. Those were her facts. Her interpretation of those facts, however, were because of all those accolades, she had no room for error. If she messed up, people would see that she really didn't have it all together and that she was a failure. But once we can separate the facts of what happened in our lives from our interpretation of the facts, we can make conscious choices guided by our higher selves about whether or not those stories are serving us any longer. Now, reframing our stories is not about spiritual bypassing or by what some people might call denial or looking at the world through rose-colored glasses. It's all about knowing that we have the power to reframe our old stories and chart a new conscious path for the future. So I have 5 steps to help you do just that, to look at our stories, look at what ones are true and what ones are error thinking, and how to reframe them. So here we go. Step number 1, stop and take a deep breath. Stop and take a deep breath. Now, from wherever you are, let's do that together. When you do that, you sit up a little straighter or stand a little straighter. Your shoulders go back a little. It allows just a little bit of space for perhaps something else to come in. Step number 2, thank that old story for getting your attention. Thank the old story for getting your attention. Whatever it is, it's trying to tell you something. Step number 3, examine that old story. Examine the old story. Is that story you're telling yourself absolutely true? How is it true? Why is it true? Could there be any other interpretation? Do the people who love and support you the most believe that story too? If you're having trouble answering any of those questions, more than likely it's that little inner critic sitting on your shoulder doing the talking. Step number 4, reframe the old story. Reframe the old story. You can ask yourself things like, what is the opposite of this old story? Or how do I want to feel without the burden of this story? Or what if I choose not to believe the story at all this time? And step number 5, be gentle with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. You're changing negative patterns of thought that have been deeply rooted in your subconscious mind, sometimes for years, and it takes time. Beating yourself up for having that old story is like going to the gym one time and ta-da! Your body will look exactly the way you want it to. But it doesn't work that way. We're just putting one story in that forgiveness centrifuge at a time, spinning it around, and separating the facts from our interpretation of the facts. If you practice these 5 steps on a regular basis, I guarantee you will experience amazing results. So this is my new arm. I call it my new bionic arm. And you can see where they put pins in to stabilize the bones and the plate holding it all together. So what I say now about those cracks in my arm, those old childhood stories, is this. I am adventuresome and like to try new things. I am capable and smart. My vulnerability is one of my strengths. People love me for who I am, not what I can do. I am grateful for the lessons and blessings in this experience. And at that plate, holding it all together, I tell myself, I am worthy and I love myself just the way I am. And to that cute little girl, I say, from your older, wiser self, you were born a perfect expression of God. You always have been, and you always will be. Those other things were your old stories, but it's time to give them up. You just need to believe in yourself because you are far more than you know. So I've written an affirmation for us today, and I'll say it once, and then we can say it together. I have the power to reframe my old stories and chart a new conscious path for the future. So wherever you are, let's say that together. I have the power to reframe my old stories and chart a new conscious path for the future. Thank you so much, Unity Palo Alto. So it is time for our time of reflection, a time of meditation, time of having a little bit of time in the silence. So I invite you, if you're sitting, to sit upright in your chair, maybe roll your shoulders back and just let everything relax. If you're comfortable, close your eyes, let your hands open, your jaw relax. Your face relax, your shoulders, your arms, your legs, your feet. And just take a deep inhale breath. And hold it at the top. And exhale out. And one more time, let's inhale up. Hold it at the top. And exhale out. So far today, we've had a lot of words, we've had some music, we've had some food for thought, and now we just take it all in. We just let it land on us wherever it lands. And just relax in the knowing that we are all here together by divine appointment. There was no real planning or accident or happenstance that brought us here together. There was something here that we needed today, whether it was some words in a song or a thought in the message or a little passage from the daily word or just the community time in the chat room, whatever it was, we were divinely guided to this moment. Spirit only wants to do its right and perfect work on our behalf at any time. And no matter what our outside circumstances look like, no matter what our old childhood stories, no matter what's happened in our life, no matter what may have happened a few minutes before we logged on today, or what may happen a few minutes after we log off today, we are here right now in the present moment. So we just allow ourselves to be present in that present moment. And just let it all rest in the silence. And as we come back to this place in time, we know that we have been changed for the better. Those past few moments are gone, and we are again in that next present moment. Present moment is all we have. So we just live into it, knowing again that Spirit is doing its right and perfect work on our behalf at all times. And we are grateful for this time of sacred community together. We are grateful for all the things that are happening in and around our lives, because nothing happens to us, it always happens through us. So we are just grateful for all that we are, all that we have, all that we give, and all that we receive. And so it is. Namaste.